So I did promise you some more good, shall we say, local conservative salt on the way, and oh my, um, it is well and truly flowing over on Conservative Home. I expect we'll probably see some very interesting ones over the coming days because oh boy, are all these local conservatives absolutely furious. Absolutely furious. But before we get into someone who really is, shall we say, throwing the blame, I think we've got to have a look at someone who is desperately trying to say that, oh, don't worry. We might have lost, in Doncaster, but don't worry, Kimmy Badenoch, she'll lead us to victory. Uh, I promise, guys. Honestly, the thing that's going to come out of this election, and the thing is going to come out of this election, especially for the Conservatives, is what they do with Kimmy Badenoch. Because this is your first electoral test. Now, even if they knew they were going to lose bad, even if you could say, oh, well, we knew we were going to lose bad because of what happened at the general elections, then what do you do? Then what do you do? How do you turn that around? How do you change perceptions of the party? All these things we have been talking about forever. Well, at least, since they lost. And they can't. They're just completely incapable of self-reflection, having a look at the 14 years of past failure. Why did they get to this place? Why did they end up losing? And here we are. So we're going to have a look at this because I think this is kind of interesting, especially the guy who's writing this as well. So anyway, back to this before we continue. So please do remember to hit the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there's the Patreon page. There's the Buy Me Coffee link if you'd like to buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button. And of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well, on me as well. So let's crack on then into this. And this is Nick Fletcher. For those of you who may remember, he is the MP for Don Valley, or at least former, I believe, MP for Don Valley. Yep. So yeah, he was again former MP for Don Valley. So this is one of the he's lost twice to in recent times. Obviously, 2024, and now he ran he lost to Labour in again something I think a lot of people really should be looking into more. Why on earth did Reform manage to take the council in Doncaster, but then lose the mayoralship? Kind of an interesting trend booking thing there going on. I think it needs more looking into why that happened, what happened there, what went on there. It's interesting stuff, but needs, I think, a bit more digging into to really have a look to find out what went on there. So let's dive into what he's saying on this because interesting times. So when David Cameron returned as Foreign Secretary in 2023 and Lee Anderson lost the Conservative whip the following year, it exposed the deep divisions within our party. There were oh, that was what exposed the deep divisions in your party, David. David Cameron coming in as Foreign Secretary and then Lee Anderson losing the Conservative whip. Maybe you should talk about why that happened, why Lee Anderson lost the Conservative whip, and more importantly, why Rishi Sunak felt he could only trust David Cameron in that position because he knew it would be somebody who couldn't stab him in the back later on. I mean, be honest, why that happened. Anyway, for some MPs, especially now trying to fend off the Liberal Democrats, welcomed these moves. But I warned that those now focusing on on a growing pressure now from reform, this signaled serious trouble. After a disastrous general election, followed by an equally poor set of local election results, I believe those concerns have now been vindicated. Really? So, does Nick Fletcher then disagree? This it sure sounds like it. Does he then disagree with the fact that Lee Anderson lost the Conservative whip? I mean, it sure sounds like it on that. And would he be okay with maybe welcoming Lee Anderson back into the party? I don't know. Anyway, let's see what he's got to say on this. So, David Cameron is a poor politician or is someone lacking ability? No, of course not. Why even bring that up? But anyway, is of course Lee Anderson a gifted orator with exceptional establishment credentials? Also, no. So why would anyone choose to follow Lee instead of David? The answer is simple. Lee speaks to the masses. David speaks to the top 20%, many of those who never had to deal now with the consequences of poor government decisions. So yeah, he is sticking up for Lee Anderson there. That is kind of weird. That is incredibly weird. It also does not reflect the fact of what happened at that point. If you look at the polls very clearly in Ashfield, prior to Lee Anderson losing the whip, he was being absolutely destroyed in the polls. He was losing his seat. What a lot of people do not remember, and this is worth remembering, was after he lost the whip, before he defected to reform, he went back and started working on his local constituency. That is how he survived. He went and started working once again with his local constituency and managed to pull it back. He managed to turn the perception around. Prior to that, the people of Ashfield, quite frankly, had had enough of him. You can even see it in the polls. So this guy who, quote, speaks to the masses, he really doesn't. He's really not that good a communicator. He's terrible at it and gets ripped into every single time he opens his mouth. Problem is, he does speak to, I would say, just as you labeled David Cameron, a very small percentage who like the way he speaks. Not that he's got anything good to say, but it's the whole Boris Johnson thing. Gee, doesn't Boris sound a lot like us? Doesn't he speak like how we would speak? It's the only reason Lee Anderson is popular. If you really want to dig in to like why he managed to survive, why a lot of people quote like Lee Anderson, that's why. But there you go. Anyway, back to this. So the challenge now is, of course, trying to convince those current Conservative MPs who kept their seats and feel that a drift now to the establishment view is the right answer. Again, establishment view. They are not doing that. They are going ever more drifting right. They are going to that Lee Anderson direction that you now apparently want, or at least it seems the way that he's going on this. They must recognize that that was and is the wrong direction and will continue to be so. That is not, of course, easy. They keep winning and people like me don't. I lost last year and lost Doncaster mayor election just last week, and they will continue believing that they are right. But the reality is there will only ever be MPs in opposition. We need to find a solution, and that is staring us now in the face. The answer is in our name. We must be conservative. So he's subscribing to the theory instantly, just on that the Conservative Party wasn't conservative enough. That is why they lost. Completely ignoring the reason why this guy won Don Valley in 2019. It was Boris, it was the promise to get Brexit done, and the promise to level up. That's ultimately why he lost. And of course, the shambolic nature of the Conservatives following that. Is he going to bring any of this up? I doubt it. So If we stick to what we know, and we should be, and what the public court expects us to be, we will win again. What should that be? What policies should you be backing? What if other people in your party maybe don't back that policy? Because I have a feeling a lot of the more centrist conservatives do not really want to back what this guy might say is good policy, but we'll see if he brings anything up. Sadly, he continues, we've tried too often to be all things to all people, bending here and softening there under the banner of kindness. What? The, oh, we were just too kind. Oh, we were just too kind. What? That's certainly a first, but kindness without discernment breeds resentment. That resentment is why reform is winning. Reform now is capitalizing on public anger about our borders, our legal system, and the ever-increasing state. I doubt that they're angry over the ever-increasing state, because I don't think people have really cottoned on yet to what reform mean when they say that. These very issues and previous Conservative governments, of course, drifted towards the very deliberate movements of the current Labour government. Again, borders. What about the borders? Why didn't you talk about the fact that it was your government, the party you were part of, broke the entire asylum system by chronically underfunding it and understaffing it? Might be something worth bringing up, you know. Conservatives, of course, shouldn't be socialist or populist. It should be conservative. So that's it. You shouldn't engage in any socialist ideas. So should the Conservative Party support the NHS? After all, it is pretty a socialist idea. It is about prudence, wisdom, fairness, law and order, opportunity, and meritocracy. It is about stepping back and letting people take charge of their own lives. It is about keeping taxes low and government lean. No, it is not. This guy is espousing the libertarian free market fundamentalist worldview of the Conservative Party on this. The second they always talk about low taxes, lean government, you know they're a libertarian conservative. And of course, driven by that free market ideology. We need to, of course, take that message to the public and help them to understand what we want them to succeed. But the government doesn't always have to be the solution now to their every problem. Of course, people just rely on government too much. Why are they having to rely on us so much? But the government is solutions to a lot of problem. Policy is the solution to a lot of problems. You know, why do people want good public services, for example? And not only that, how then do you pay for those good public services? Oh, that means you have to have higher taxes. You want good public services, you have to pay for them. And conservatives, time and time again, when you look at that type of thing, they are actually quite fine paying higher taxes for public services. Because guess what? Having good public services polls really well right across all parties. Strange how that is a thing, isn't it? Anyway, it is time to, of course, clearly set out what that looks like in practice. We all remember Blair's mantra of education, education, education. If we are to win, ours must be repeal, repeal, repeal. Yeah, just repeal everything and everything will be fine. So repeal the Convention on Human Rights, repeal the Equality Act, repeal the Gender Recognition Act. These are all very, very popular things, especially the equality and the can't even say it, the Gender Recognition Act. Right? Good luck repealing those. Not only that, Convention on Human Rights. Yeah, good luck getting rid of that as well, because that is baked into our withdrawal agreement with the EU that we would follow that we would be following that. What, of course, does then that say about our agreements to the Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland? So many consequences that if you get rid of that, what does that mean? And then again, what does this mean for policy that has been built on and laws built on around things like the Equality Act or the Gender Recognition Act. So many things and problems they would create by just going, but this is what they think will somehow solve everything. If they can just get rid of these acts, then somehow everything would be magically better. Anyway, we must, of course, educate the public about what that truly means. The left will, of course, predictably spread misinformation that the Tories want to end marriage rights, deny fair pay, or abandon the vulnerable. But if you get rid of those rights, those acts, that is exactly what you are saying, because many of those rights, fair pay, and abandonment of the vulnerable, all based on those acts. They're all based on that. You know, they want to sort of pull the foundations out of a house and expect the house to still be standing. You can't just do that. But this is what they think, because they're insane. Because their ideology tells them if you get rid of those things, somehow it's all sunshine and rainbows. And this is one of the core problems that we've talked about in the party. It's guys like this. This is why the Conservative Party lost so badly in 2024. This guy can't understand it. He can't understand because he won't have any moment of self-reflection or looking back at Conservative policy for the past 14 years, why it failed. But if we control the narrative cleanly, concisely, and confidently, people understand what conservatism stands for. I love it. Oh, yeah, if we just control the narrative, people will believe. Anyway, they might not always agree with us. They may not even like us, but they will respect us. I don't think even they will respect you, to be honest, because they don't now. And they will know exactly where we stand. We must explain that without repealing these laws, we will continue to struggle to deport illegal immigrants. It has nothing to do with the European Convention of Human Rights, because we still have international treaty obligations when it comes to immigration, and especially legal immigrants as well. But there are ways you can get rid of illegal immigrants if you had maybe, I don't know, a proper staffed asylum system. And again, illegal migration is small potatoes. Small potatoes. So few people actually come over here illegally. But yet, that's what they bang the drum on, worrying people about that. We will continue to curb free speech. No, we haven't curbed free speech at all. This is, again, just a fantasy of this type of the faction in the Conservative Party. We'll keep relying on legislation to address social disorder when once we relied on values and personal responsibility. What? So if social disorder does happen, it's just personal responsibility, not, you know, maybe the government should act in that to make sure the social disorder doesn't happen in the first place. We'll keep spending time and money stopping biological males with mental health. Oh, that's bad. That's bad. Oh dear. That's incredibly bad. I'm just not going to even read that because that's just wrong. I feel bad for even doing that. But yeah, indoctrinating children in schools, places where they should be, and of course, you know, not surprising that he's put that, of course. But again, part of the reason why they lost in 2024, they don't understand. I will tell you this now: that whole court ruling has opened up a massive can of worms for people on the whole turfy side, not realizing it. You're seeing, you know, people being accused of being men going into, you know, women's bathrooms, and this is happening constantly all the time now because these people were insane. It was just fueled on pure hatred, and I think the public is going to very quickly cotton on that, oh, those people were always lunatics, because we're back where we were just a couple of years ago, that maybe, you know, now we need 3 bathrooms instead of 2. And of course, businesses went, well, we don't really want to invest all that money? Can we just, have some, guidance and legislation on that? So they did that. And of course, what happened? The turfs came along and went, no, can't have that. And now we're back um, square one again in this conversation about, 3 bathrooms. Again, it's just, it's, I understand why some people care about it. Of course, I understand, but I just don't understand why the hate. I don't understand the insanity that comes from that turfy side of things. I just like anyway. Yeah, let's get back to this. So we may just not, of course, but we just must not just resist. We must also build. We have, rightly or wrongly, around many from what many from different cultures into this country. While we often complain about others practicing their customs here, we rarely demonstrate our own, or whether not other cultural practices should be permitted. Here is a question for another day. What? What? What cultural practices, my friend? Wow. Mm, mm, hmm. Considering the fact that we've just had the VE Day celebrations, but this is the whole like cultural argument. Oh my god, British culture is dying. British culture is not dying. These people do not know what British culture is, because if you were to ask, many people will give you entirely different interpretations what that is. They have no idea what they are talking about. They are losing nothing, but they are being panicked into it by people like this to think that, oh my god, they're losing something. No, you're not. You are not losing anything at all. Culture changes. Every culture changes. Like it or not, you can go back 100 years to the Victorian era and you can find some pretty standard cultural norms back in the Victorian era, which we would find pretty weird by today's standard, but were perfectly culturally normally accepted back in the Victorian age. Hmm. Anyway, back to this. But of course, we must start trying to embrace our own culture before it is lost. We aren't losing any of this culture. I heard Douglas Murray say something recently that struck me. We assume that we love, and by our loving it, we make it indestructible. But what happens when it is destroyed? It doesn't go anywhere. Culture is just an amorphous blob. It does not need protecting. It is constantly ever changing. And these guys do not like it that, quote, culture changes. They are the stick in the muds in this place. We say we love our churches, yet they are empty. Oh no, people are not going to church. How are you going to enforce policy to force people into churches? um we love our pubs, yet they are closing. Well, again, numerous reasons why that is. Are you gonna do things that, I don't know, maybe support the beverage industry in the UK that maybe would stop these pubs from closing? What does this guy think to the fact that especially the newer generations that are now coming in are drinking far less, because for them going out to the pub all the time and drinking alcohol is just becoming even more expensive. Yeah, all this type of stuff that is, changing. This guy can't understand at all, but it's so weird, so weird on this. Honestly, we love football, but leave the coaching now to someone else's parent. Hasn't that always been the case? We love the smell of libraries. I believe the book stacking now to an aging volunteer. We love to, quote, praise the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, yet we shop online or at Tesco. So why aren't you then encouraging landlords who own those, shall we say, streets where there could be businesses in, but they can't because their rent that they charge is so astronomically high that if they were to lower the rent, which at what point they would get those small businesses in, the price of the property would then go down. Are you going to go after them on that? So much stuff this guy just doesn't understand. Yeah, you don't understand. It's just a cultural issue. It's nothing to do with cultural issues. It has everything to do with practical policy that affects everything that we do. This is why I've always said culture war issues rot people's brains. That's why I never go or cover culture war stuff, because it is brain rotting to go after and do stuff after. I would rather actually talk about actual real world policy that actually matters. Anyway, so as conservatives, we must now reclaim our culture. Again, no idea, understanding why this guy lost in 2024. It was had nothing to do with that they just weren't conservative enough. Didn't matter. They could have been conservative to the hilt. They would have still lost the 2024 general election. This, of course, doesn't require billions in spending. It requires those wearing the conservative badge to promote, if not practice. We believe that there are British values encouraging church attendance. Oh, good luck in that. Promoting community sport, be visible in our towns and villages, champion, of course, the Union flag. Stop obsessing over niche identity issues while still being respectful and inclusive of all. And yes, we must be led. I love that. Being respectful, inclusive of all, except when it comes maybe to trans people. And then that's where that respectfulness, that inclusivity seems to stop. You can't say that when you've just said something so, I would say, transphobic in this statement that she's already said. How on earth can you say that with that previous statement? That is insane. That is absolutely insane. Anyway, right now, reform is, of course, dominating the airwaves. But let's be clear, Nigel Farage is a great orator, but not a leader. He's demonstrated now this nationally through now constantly fallouts with his own party members, all 5 of them. He has shown it very locally too, reporting a pressure now from a 30-year-old with no politicians or business experience to be Reform's Doncaster mayoral candidate, responsible now for a £700 million budget. Why? Because their original candidate dropped out. And Nigel, already having booked Doncaster racecourses for a very high-profile announcement, chose saving face over stability. The result, the male model who could barely speak, hidden from view the moment, of course, questions were raised. And bear in mind, that is probably the only fair, I would say, statement he has made. The Doncaster mayoral candidate that Reform put in there was shocking. But it seems to be following a pattern that in this election in particular, that Reform were just standing candidates for just standing a candidate's sake. And you are now hearing a lot of news that a lot of people really did not want to win these things. And that in sort of 6 months' time, we're going to see a lot of people, these candidates, winning their seats, standing down, because guess what? They can't actually take the amount of work and responsibility it has of being a local councillor. They're at, the number that they are now, I guarantee you that's going to drop, because there's going to be by-elections. And then what do you do? Yeah. Anyway. I challenged Nigel to debate me, but it seems that Reform's new deportation minister must have deported him somewhere that he could win. Oh yeah, debate me, Nigel. Debate me. That would have been a disaster of a debate. It would have been bizarre in the least. And then, of course, there are the other party leaders who insist the woman, again, turfy nonsense going on there. If someone is willing to follow a person who is either stupid, weak, or morally bankrupt, it speaks volumes. Well, they are either those 3 things because of his view and his bizarre morals, which don't really seem to speak for the great majority of Britons. Anyway, It speaks volumes. But again, this is often done in the name of, quote, kindness. And that same unexamined, uncindering kindness is what is now slowly killing this country. That's right. They're killing this country with kindness. The problem, why, according to this guy, is that conservatives are just too kind and kindness is killing this country. What on earth is this guy on? What on earth is this guy on? We do not need kind slogans or TikTok personalities. We need a leader with backbone, someone who understands conservatism, someone who won't sway to every new social trend, someone who could set a very clear narrative the public can understand, believe in, and follow. My hometown is a mess. Doncaster's not that bad, to be honest, but there you go. This country is a mess. No, it's not. Socialism isn't the answer. Neither is populism. Again, depends what policy, because again, this guy is just using the socialism and populism as just dirty words to throw around. But again, it should always be about policy, because what does this guy think to the NHS? The NHS is a very, very social policy. He praised local libraries, quite a socialist policy, wouldn't you think? But again, just go to show you, these people are just so inconsistent with their worldview because they stick to their ideology. The ideology says if you follow it, everything should be hunky dory. But of course, what happens? They are an absolute disaster zone. We need a leader who can deliver. We have 4 years to get all the detail right before we get the opportunity to try and take back leadership of this country. We must have a plan. We must state what needs replacing. State what needs repealing. Again, you would never get those things repealed at all. And if not, another government can basically come back, well, we're going to put that back in. Then what? Then what do you do? Yeah. And what do you do about all the laws, policies, and the things that are built on those acts as well? You know, there are consequences if you pull the foundations out of your house. We must prepare to fight. We must prepare to embrace a champion of what is great. We must be led without compromise. Someone once told me, it's not the direction of the wind we sail, but the sail that counts. And that sail must be set right towards true blue conservatism. I'm confident our current leader is the one that can be captain of that ship. While not a lot of your fellow conservatives are certainly sure in that. I'm daring to say what some of these in the comments would be. Someone praising him. Of course, God, I do feel like I should come in and just call out his transphobia onto these some of this stuff. Yeah. Some of this, my hometown is a mess, the country is a mess, and yet we've just had 14 years of conservative government. I believe scientists cause it cause and effect. Um, yeah, this guy has no idea why they lost. I'm going to leave a comment maybe later on, call him out on some of that stuff because yeah, that's mm, mm, yeah, kind of odd. But anyway, yeah, the madness certainly continues in a lot of the conservative press. But as you can see, that is the argument that is in vogue in the Conservative Party, that they weren't conservative enough. They just weren't conservative enough. You know, oh, we need proper conservative values, but values are not policy. And it all comes down to policy. And I've said this, I don't know how many times. The second Badnock comes out and says, this is what our policy is going to be on this, or this, or this, that is when the arguments will start again. That is when you will get the internal divisions breaking open. Because right now they've got nothing to argue about, except, of course, maybe about the future leadership of Kimmy Badnock. We'll see if that maybe bubbles over. We'll see if maybe that becomes the primary thing they start arguing about, because it already is very clear that is what they are going to probably start arguing about pretty soon if Badnock doesn't really start, showing any results anytime soon. But we'll see on that front. Oof. Anyway, so as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.